Donald Trump's peace board is gearing up to run Gaza as the ceasefire finally enters its second stage.
I think the Board of Peace will be the most prestigious board ever, and it's going to get a lot of work done that the United Nations should have done.
But huge questions remain over the legitimacy of Trump's plan, what role Tony Blair will play, and whether Palestinians in Gaza ever got to experience peace at all. Joining me to discuss this is former Israeli negotiator Daniel Levy. Daniel, great to see you again.
Good to be back.
So, Daniel, Trump has given Blair a central role in this Board of Peace, which was initially supposed to be composed of heads of state. Do you think Blair realises that he's no longer a world leader?
There is the Board of Peace, and then there is the executive to the Board of Peace. Then there is the Gaza executive to the Board of Peace, and then you have a high representative, you have the special advisors. If Elon Musk was still around with his chainsaw at Doge, I imagine he'd be looking at this bureaucratic wastage and saying, what the hell's going on? But
so Blair's on two of those boards.
Blair's on two of those boards. He's the only European on the overall executive board. I imagine he'll be one of the more active members because others have more proper daytime jobs than our former prime minister. I don't want to go into a psychoanalysis of the desperate desire to feel like you're still a prime minister and all of that, and to feel relevant and to be close to power. I would say this. We know through a FOIA request, I think inside Israel, that Tony Blair has been probably the prominent world figure who has most frequently visited Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu since the ICC arrest warrant was issued against the Israeli premier. We, of course, know that there's a history there of Blair in the Middle East as Prime Minister, subsequently in terms of who his closest clients have been, the biggest funders to his foundation. And there's a history there of him never having been held accountable for what happened in Iraq, which all suggests that it's perfectly on brand to have Tony Blair in this role.
The world was and is, in my judgment, a better place without Saddam Hussein.
I think it's right to look at Blair and his involvement. European governments, in the end, in the most part, you got some exceptions, Hungary being a notable one under Viktor Orban, but in the most part, they looked at this and said, no, thank you. We're not going to join the Board of Peace. Blair is there.
Our correspondent in Gaza interviewed Palestinians there about Blair's role on the board. And this is what they said to her. So one man, Omar Barhoum, he said, when we heard the names, we felt that this board would entrench a reality imposed on us. Blair's name, in the minds of many of us, is associated with war, destruction, and close relations with Israel and the United States. Now, obviously, that's just a snapshot of Palestinian opinion. But if they were given the choice, how many Palestinians in Gaza do you think would vote for Blair to have any role in running their society?
He has, Blair, more name recognition, and therefore I think people also draw that association which comes out in those quotes of that, hey, recolonizing, deepening your dismissive, racist attitudes towards the people in the region is not a post-October 2023 phenomenon, not even in this century. It's deeply embedded in that vision that came with Iraq, the coalition provision authority that was established in Iraq, Blair's involvement in helping tee up the invasion, the British endorsement of American lies, which were used to justify that war outside of a legal UN framework. And that's where those reactions are coming from. Of course, people in Gaza would like to take their own responsibility. We'll probably talk about it, but these images of these gleaming towers that first came out of the Israeli Prime Minister's office, then presented in at Davos by Jared Kushner as part of these plans, those aren't Palestinians saying, here's how we see our future, whether it's in Gaza or their right to return to where they or their parents, grandparents were originally expelled from inside Israel proper in the first Nakba. So this has nothing to do with the well-being of Palestinians, and I think that's what they're giving vent to.
How did you feel when you saw those images that Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, was presenting? this kind of futuristic or dystopian vision of Gaza.
I mostly thought, mate, can't you come up with something more original? Because I was like, wait a minute, in December of 2023, just pause for a moment, 2 months in, Netanyahu's office produces a document, Gaza Vision for 2035. It is premised on the entire destruction of Gaza. It uses the language, rebuild from nothing. To rebuild from nothing, you have to ensure there is nothing. That's what they went on to ensure in the subsequent months and years, allowed to do so, not only with impunity, but with the active assistance and enabling of the Biden and then the Trump administration and the European allies, and we all know that recent history. It's the same images, tweaked a little bit. And then I thought, wait a minute, but I recognize those images from further back. In 2019, 2020, Jared Kushner, in the first Trump term, is putting together the so-called Peace to Prosperity Plan, their idea of how you entrench, formalize, make permanent a Bantustan apartheid reality, which they call peace. Those images, a likeness thereof, appear there. And the same kind of nonsense has come up elsewhere. Gaza Riviera plan that Trump touted as his first real foray into this arena in his second term.
Donald's coming to set you free, bringing the light for all to see. No more tunnels, no more fear. Gaza is finally here. I
would also urge people not to fall too much for the theatrics. Look over here, gleaming pictures of gleaming buildings. What's going on over here? These plans continue to create new layers of a permissive environment for Israel to continue the destruction. What's going on is not rebuilding. What's going on the ground in Beit Hanun and Rafah is finishing the job of making sure there is nothing. That's the key. Israel in occupation of 58% of Gaza, still not allowing in what should be allowed in. Close now on 500 Palestinians killed since the so-called ceasefire. Rubble removing equipment still not allowed in so that they can even get to the bodies of the dead. So, it's also a distraction. These things aren't going to be built, but it's a game that they will have everyone play.
When I first saw Jared Kushner's models of what he wants Gaza to look like, I thought of Dubai and the Gulf states. But is there an even older precedent in Israel for this model?
So we've been looking at these images, these pictures. These are AI generated, of course. But the idea predates the ability to generate AI images. So I can't show you these, but in the Israeli discourse, you can go back to this idea that why are the Palestinians such failures? Gaza could be this fabulous Singapore, like before we had the gleaming models of the Gulf to look to.
אנחנו יכולים להיות הפרטנרים הכי טובים שלכם למאמץ להפוך את מחנות הפליטים לסינגפור של מזרח התיכון.
And instead of making Gaza the Singapore of the Middle East, as they could have done, they chose to make it in the biggest terror nest of the world.
So that was a narrative from Shimon Peres. It was, of course, the narrative that most took hold after the withdrawal. So when Israel withdraws from Gaza, unilateral disengagement, Ariel Sharon, he at the time, his people say, this is our way. Look, Gaza is only 6% of the Palestinian territory. If you exclude all of Israel, right? If you just have West Bank and Gaza, Gaza's only 6% of that. Israel withdraws from Gaza, only 7,500, 8,000 settlers there, not the hundreds of thousands in the West Bank. And they say, now Palestinians, you show the world that you can make this into a Singapore. So it's this narrative that's designed to show that we try our best. We give these guys the best opportunities we can, and they consistently fail to rise to the occasion. Who are you going to look at? The guys who are trying to do everything to help them, or these failed? And that's the deep colonial racist mindset at the root of all this.
So is this Board of Peace actually going to do anything? I mean, how's it supposed to work, even in theory?
The Board of Peace has now had its charter made public. It's had its founding meeting. that charter doesn't mention Gaza. What's interesting about this, to my mind, is that the world, European states, member states of the UN Security Council, regional states, initially endorsed the Board of Peace. Many of those who have now said, we're not joining this, what do you mean? Because in the Charter of the Board of Peace, everything ultimately is decided by one person, Donald J. Trump. It says votes will be by majority decision if the decision is authorized by the president. The ultimate arbiter is the president on every issue, from membership to anything else.
And members of the Board of Peace Executive Board, great group. This week marks the 1-year anniversary of my second inauguration as president. No administration in history has achieved such a sweeping turnaround in 12 months' time at home and abroad. We have a tremendous mandate. We won the popular vote by millions.
President for life, right? Even after if he leaves office.
Should he so choose, he can disband the Board of Peace at his own whim as well. This is an attempt to, despite their disagreements with John Bolton, actually, it's to finish the work of John Bolton. People remember that particular character in the American Republican neoconservative firmament, which is to try and remove the relevance of the United Nations. But what's the interesting thing? The interesting thing is the Board of Peace actually has been endorsed by the United Nations Security Council. The UN Security Council essentially wrote itself out of existence.
Specifically in Gaza, right? The UN resolution gave the Board of Peace a mandate for Gaza.
Exactly. So what happens? The Americans come forward with this 20-point plan, and everyone shuffles off to Sharm el-Sheikh, including Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
Come here. Is everything going good? Very good. It's very nice that you're here. These people all came in like 20-minute notice.
Everyone then endorses the regional states, the 8 Arab Muslim majority states, the Europeans. They all endorse this thing. And what does it say? It basically hands over the implementation of everything to do with a peace plan in Gaza to what was then a body that still hadn't been constituted. The Board of Peace exists in Articles 2 through 7, I think, of that UN resolution. It says that board will offer strategic guidance and oversee an international force, which will fall outside of the remit of the UN, will oversee humanitarian aid, will run Gaza. The board still didn't exist. But here's the thing. When this was an abomination with none of the trappings of international legal authority that anyone would normally accept, but when it was a thing to be applied to Palestinians, it was okay. Everyone says, yeah, we're on board. This is great. What do you mean? The Charter of the Board of Peace isn't just about Gaza. What, you're going to bring this to Greenland and Ukraine? Are you crazy? We can't be treated like Palestinians. So here was what so many people have been going around with for the last 2 years, and of course the decades preceding that, which is anything is okay if it's applied to the Palestinians. Is these people should be treated as subhuman in every respect. Suddenly, it was, you're going to use your deranged neo-imperialism and your economic coercion with us? Whoa, steady on. You can do it in Venezuela. You can do it in Palestine. And so most of those countries have stepped back from the Board of Peace. But you do have this significant cohort of Arab and Muslim majority states there. And I think what the decision they have made is the only way we can try and influence outcomes in Gaza is that the only show is Trump. We go along and we try and tweak it as we go along. So they could point to there's a document that's come out in terms of the resolution of the Board of Peace on Gaza. It's not been authorized yet, but I assume it's accurate. So it, for instance, says there, Palestinians will not be forcibly removed from Gaza and they will be allowed to return. And they would say, look, given that ethnic cleansing is the goal of Israel, what a great achievement. That's the painfully low bar that they are aspiring to. I think it's a huge mistake. I don't think it will be successful. What has been, to an extent, successful is if you're a peer power like China on tariffs, you simply stare down this president's bully. And you say, no. That is not the approach that's been chosen by the states in the region. Netanyahu's bet is they are sufficiently internally divided. Palestine is sufficiently not a priority. There is not a Palestinian leadership to push this priority, so it will work for me. Thus far, he's been right.
Daniel, thank you so much for sharing your expert analysis with Declassified. It's always fascinating to talk to you about what's going on in the Middle East. Thanks for watching this video. We have an event coming up on Saturday, the 31st of January in London. Tickets are still on sale and they're available in the link below. Thanks for watching.